and I'll get it to Nick and have Nick post it on there. I wish I could tell you off the top of my head what the name of the place is, but I can't. But I'll definitely get it posted on here sometime. So, anyways, all right, Chief Petty Officer Adam Lorentz. I'm currently the Executive Petty Officer of the Coast Guard Cutter Vice. ATOM background, I've got Aunt Mariches as an XPO, Aunt Mariches. Yeah, Aunt Mariches is an XPO, Aunt Tybee is the officer in charge prior to this, and then another Aunt Mobile. And then now, like I said, I'm on a construction tender. So thank you guys all for participating in the forum. I see I got a bunch of sitting OICs or people who hold the call, so I know I'll be scrutinized about this in later text messages, but I'll try to do my best. So a few things before we get to the wonderful world of ATON, which is what I'll be covering tonight, is I just want to touch on something. Please take a look at the Facebook page if you guys haven't. B1 McGowan is in the beginning stages of developing a spouse's guide, I guess you want to call it, to better inform our significant others on the process of what we're going to be going through or what you're going to be going through, and to, I guess, try to better help them prepare and be less stressful, knowing what to expect and what's going to be happening over the next couple months of your life as you are preparing for this. So check it out. If you're willing and able, there's a little link, or not a link, but a little message that he wrote on there. And then he's just asking for your names to see if your spouses are willing to answer just 3 quick questions, and to help him better get some feedback so he can better help the future of this board process go. So another thing is, with all this, and as all these instructors are, right, this is strictly coming from our experience. This is a one-stop shop. So I'm not going to say that I'm going to touch on everything ATON that you probably need to look at, but I'm going to try to touch on as much things, and based off my experience as an OIC and XPO, sitting through the boards, being on the other side of the table, and just know that it's coming from me. I'm not policy. I'm just stating what I read and what I see. So make sure you guys are discussing with other OICs on the rivers, especially for you guys who send it for ATON afloat. Right, District 8 SOP is a huge thing to read up. Get in touch with your Mark Engels of D7 and your Paul Lehmans, right? Your waterways guys, your IATONist guys, your Payton people. Them civilians in them jobs are willing to help out. So please get in touch with them. The Master Chief Stovers and the Jimmy Holstons on the rivers, the Eric Dools, all them guys. Get in touch with them. They might not be in your districts. You might not know them, but everybody's willing and able in the ATON community to send them out an email and just want to pick their brains on what they know, get some knowledge, at least some minimum knowledge to be able to maybe understand, which we'll talk about, stages on the rivers, fast water, pool water, all that good stuff. So make sure you reach out to them. Another key point, right, if you're waiting to the last minute, if you're waiting to find out who is on the boards, you're too late. So the people who are going to be on your boards or in your respective sectors sometimes will get called out. District, you might not know everybody, but the OICs in your sectors, you should already be reaching out to them. You know that at least 5, 6, 7 of them are going to be in your board panel, so make sure that you're getting with them now. Ask yourself what to do or what you've done to prepare. You need to get into the manuals. Like Carson was said the other day, and I thought it was great, right? You got to go an inch deep and a mile wide into these things, so there's going to be a lot of information. But know what you've done to prepare. This college is not a one-stop shop, like I just said. I've been fortunate enough to be on the other side of the table, and believe you me, it's impressive how far that first impression goes, right? What your uniform looks like, all that good stuff. So understand the gray area. Carson talked about it, and I'm sorry, I know I'm doing ATON, but this stuff's pretty important to me, and if I can get any time to squeeze it in, I am. But know that gray area, right? He talked about being risk-adverse, or that not being so risk-adverse, what risks you're going to take, but know that gray area, right? That policy box is an old crusty Master Chief. I'm going to throw him out there. Master Chief Laughlin would say there's a policy box for a reason, right? We try to operate within that policy, but some decisions we have to make are going to be skirting the lines of that policy. Sometimes you're going to go out of it, but just be able to articulate and not hide, tell people when you have to operate or deviate from that policy, just don't hide it, and you should be fine as long as you don't do nothing really stupid. So this isn't like a service-wide. Look through the manuals, know what's important. You should know what a 6x36 independent wire rope core XXIPS means, right? So you don't need to look at that, but look at the stuff that you don't know, or that you might not know, or you need to touch up on. So the board might throw you some softballs to get you back on track. Might be boat specific. I know that they say it's not boat specific, but if you're kind of fumbling off, they might ask you what the Tambi pad eyes are rated for. So know them kinds of things when you're going through this. So the TTPs, I didn't get too far into the TTPs and the NSTMs, right? There's a lot of manuals for ATON, and you know probably 3/4 of them. But get into the NSTMs, the 613 for rigging, the 589 for cranes, the TTP for brush cutting, which we'll talk about a little bit, the chainsaw, seamanship, all that good stuff. So, sorry, I'm trying to make sure that I don't have any questions. But the biggest thing, like I said, before we get going on this, is just make sure that you're reaching out to the Master Chief Gonzalez's and all them guys like that have had this stuff, right? Shoot them emails. Get out there. And like I said, I've never been on the rivers, but believe you me, when I was sitting for my ATON afloat, I was reaching out to people that were like, who are you? You know, they didn't know me for anything, but they were willing to give me as much information, as much time as they could give me. So, all right, ATON admin, we'll get right into it. First and foremost, know how to spell the word buoy. That was one of the first questions I was asked to me, and I'm like, oh, man. So, know how to spell that word. It's not that hard, but in the board setting, it could be. So, know how to spell buoy. Get a copy of the District 8 Waterways SOP. That's where all your river stuff's going to come from. Very important to know the first 43 pages of the light list. All right, there's some good information. That might be a question that's asked to you. From general definitions to light characteristics to all that good stuff. So know that. First 43 pages of the light list. In Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 in the admin manual, I think it's about 13 pages. There's some very good information in there. So make sure you read that. Like I said before, talk to your environmental person at DPW. Try to find out any restrictions that you may have when it comes to, moving AP or ospreys, whatever migratory species stuff that you got going on. So make sure you get onto that. So, all right, moving in. So, first question is, and I'm not going to expect the answer right. I'm just going to throw some questions out at you. It's kind of hard to see all the answers and everything that's going through, but know what the Coast Guard's authority is with ATON, right? Develop, maintain, administer, establish, and operate with due regard in order to prevent disasters, collisions, or wrecks. So, Coast Guard's authority when it comes to ATON. Know the 3 types of the marking systems that we use, right? The ICW, the Western Rivers, PATON. Your classifications of PATON, how many we have, which is 3, and actually 4, but technically 3. Read it, and you'll see what I'm talking about the 4th. But know how often they have to be visited, know who can visit them, especially on a Category 1. There's a little blurb in there that says who can visit, and if you have to. And another big question is, what does ATON do? So why do we establish ATON? And there's 5 things, I believe it's 5, but it's determine position, help mariners determine position, plot a safe course, warn of dangers and obstructions, promote safe and economic movement of commercial traffic as well as military traffic. So, in the admin manual, it states your responsibilities as the OIC as well as the statutory authorities. You might get asked, what does that mean? Due care. Right? What does due care mean? What does that mean to you when you read them the statutory authorities? What does that mean to you? You might get asked, what are you going to do to improve the ATON system as a whole through your unit for the Coast Guard? That's kind of a hard question, but you know what? For all you ATON guys out there, just use your experience. What have you done to try to better your ATON in your area? Are you setting day bores 30 degrees to the channel, or are you just setting them to align this way? Know what stakeholders in your local communities do you want to have a good, strong working relationship with? And, just think about, hey Casey, sorry. Think about, your Army Corps and your pilots. One big thing that I can tell you might not be board specific, but as an OIC, I made sure that them guys were happy. As much as I could give them, I would give them. As much as I could stop doing what I was doing to help them, I would, because they're the guys at the end of the day, and the guys and gals at the end of the day that are going to have your back. And when you got to break that hard question to them that I got to range down, and it's on the pot board and not get fixed until FY19, they're going to understand, because they know how you work for them as much as they do work for you. So, all right, let's get into the good stuff. 3213. I said I want to ask questions, but it would take up so much time if I had to wait for people's answers. So, what does a 3213 signify, right? It's an operational change request, right? But know that it justifies and authorizes what? Also know what the 3213 Alpha and the 3213 Bravo are. So know you got a fixed and a floating. So one is to justify and authorize, and then the Alpha and the Bravo is going to go into your fixed and your floating equipment, and moving on from there. Who has to approve it, and what happens after it's approved, and then what do you got to do once you complete the work? If you complete partial, what do you have to do? I'm sorry, I talk with my hands a lot in case you can't tell. But it's also good to know how long it's been advertised, and the locals might get brought up. I don't know. That's just for me. We kind of know, hey, how long it's going to be advertised A, B, and C before your change will get authorized by who? Obviously the district, but it's not a showstopper if you don't know. That's just good information to know. Same thing with the WAMs. You might get asked what a WAMs is. Know what it is. Briefly know who initiates it, and know what its intent is. So, even though the district is going to initiate it, who's really going to do it? You might be part of that. You might get asked that on the board. So, all right, temp aids. How long can a temporary aid be on scene, and when should you start to consider making it a permanent buoy? Aid availability rating. How many categories do we have? What is it based off of, and what's your required percentage of time it should be left watching properly? So your aid availability rating, we're going to have 3 categories. No little blurb for each one, right? Vital, important, and necessary. Vital being category 1 is a 99.8. Important, which is your category 2, is a 99, and then necessary is a 97% for your aid availability category. That might be thrown at you. Ask just like that. How many aid availability categories do we have, or what is your percentage for category 1s? Recs. So who's responsible once we get a wreck? And I'm not talking about wreckage from one of our fixed aid, but say you have a boat that goes down or whatever, some kind of wreckage. Who's responsible for marking that wreck? Can you mark that wreck? Who is going to be the one that's authorizing you to mark that wreck if you're allowed? But no, right? The Coast Guard is not. I don't want to say the Coast Guard is not responsible. The owner is responsible, ultimately responsible for marking that wreck. However, the district admiral can authorize you to mark that wreck. So just know that that's not your decision. That's going to be the district's decision, and obviously you'll be having some conversations leading up to that setting of that buoy or that wreck buoy. Know how a wreck buoy is labeled as well, and what the flash characteristic for it is. Going back to when you're going to establish an aid. So when we're establishing an aid, and I know a lot of times some things will be on the construction tenders, but know as an OIC what required documentation you are required to sign for establishing an aid. Right? Thinking of your SIFs and your DRF, your APR, your initial FID, your folders, all that good stuff. So think about the things you might get asked. And when establishing an aid, what are some of the paperwork that you have to sign? Know what a SIF is, a servicing interval flow chart. Know what it's used for. How often you're required to do one, and or look it over. So we're required to do one when an aid is established. And then how often do you have to update that, look it over, re-sign it, however you want to do it with your unit. But just know that timeline. DRFs. Know how many parts of the DRF we have. Don't think into it of, oh, I know there's this many things that I got to check in this number value, but know that there's two parts of the DRF, right? There's a DRF one that you establish when you establish an aid, and that you have to obviously look over and update as necessary, depending on your waterway. And know that the DRF Part 2 is going to be once you have a discrepancy and then a number of values can get involved. I'm not going to say, I don't know. I knew the number values, and it was asked to me on my board if I knew the number values of the DRF Part 2. So if you want to spend the time to know that, it's great. It only makes you look better. Makes like you know better. I don't think it's a showstopper, but it's good. When you ask what are the different levels, right? Decision deferred. So think of DRF, right? Decision deferred, routine, priority high, immediate, right? Discrepancy response, priority high, immediate. That's the way I always remembered. So if you know the number values, great. If you know the categories, great. You'll probably get asked on your board. Are you going to have one at home? I like to ask. Are you going to have a DRF Part 2 at home, and why? I'm getting to that, Mr. Curtis. I'm sorry I just saw your thing there, but are you going to have a DRF part 2 at home? That way when somebody asks you or your coxswain calls you and says, I got a 156, when I figure everything out and it's decision deferred, is that a decision deferred? Well, if you had one, you'd know that it's not. The 149 would be decision deferred, and anything higher than that would be another category. So I like to ask that one. But just like Mr. Curtis asked, that was my next block. So know what kind of things is in the district policy. So where do your message formats come from, right? That comes from the district SOP. And a lot of them mirror each other, but a lot of them are going to be different based on districts. So know the messages. I don't want to say know the messages. Know what policy that the district's going to put out there, right? They're going to control the message traffic, aid folders, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look in there, it's pretty simple. They'll tell you how your aid folder is supposed to be in a 6-part folder, your message traffic that you're supposed to do, all that good stuff. So let me try to do some of these questions. Hey, Greg, how are you, sir? Yeah, I can see your post. And yes, I was ignoring him, Jake. So, sorry. All right. Structures. So know that we got 3 types of structures, which are going to be major, minor, and lighthouses. Biggest thing I think that the board's looking for, right, is if they ask you that question, there's a few key words, right? So there's simple in design and complex in design. So know the difference in between them two and then which one they're associated with. And the lighthouses are obviously self-explanatory. How often the structural integrity of a major structure required to be completed? I'll leave that one out to you if somebody can tell me that besides Mr. Curtis. I'm pretty sure he knows. So once again, how often is the structural integrity of a major structure required to be completed, and by who? So climbing. Can you qualify at your unit as a climber without going to the NATON course? If so, what can you qualify to? Know what the difference is in between basic and advanced, the height differences. Can you get a waiver? Or I guess, what would be the process if you went from an ATON unit to an ATON unit? Would you have to get a waiver? If you went from an ATON unit and you got out of the ATON community for a tour and you came back to the ATON community, what would that process be? Is there a waiver process? You might get asked, is a CEU train-the-trainer course still available? And then know, by going to ATON, what is the only, yes, Jake, you're right, 5 years. And CEU will initiate. It might not be CEU. Going back to that structural integrity of a major structure, it might not be CEU, but CEU will normally contract somebody to come out and dive and check the structural integrity. But going back to climbing, knowing if you go to NATON, you get what certification that you can't get if you disqualify at your unit going through the PQS, which there is a climber PQS. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And then that competent person would be only a competent person could be from the NATON school. So, and then the inspection criteria that comes from that, from your PQS. So, at what heights are you required to wear fall protection equipment? And another good question I like to ask is, what will you consider when wearing the gear? So SPW, right, is over that, would be over that number, right? So are you going to have your guys wear fall protection equipment, meaning a 6-point harness and all that stuff when you're climbing an SPW? Do you have to? Where does it state that you don't or you do? And then also something else to consider is, your guys or your gals climbing a small James River structure. Are you going to have them and wearing it? So, and know when you get asked, right, thinking of a normal person, say 6 foot tall, with your climber harness, with the Y lanyards, all that good stuff. Just think of that. If you've been to the school, think of the height by the time they fall. What's going to happen? Is anything, is a need for it there, whatever the case may be. So just know what you're going to do. And then a big thing with climber is your pre-climb safety. There's a checklist. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend you get it. You should be using it. But, it goes over the planning, the ORM, the emergency procedures, work to be completed, structure inspection form, which we'll get into. And then, climber's responsibility, all that good stuff. So know that your climbers, right, the 3 major things that they got to have, right, is they got to be a responsible volunteer, physically capable, and recommended by yourself before you can send them to school. Yeah, rescue. Good job, Jeremy. I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up with this stuff. So, I did not know that, Nick, if they're doing that. I know they kind of briefly looked at it, but I didn't know it was an inspection criteria now for the RFO and the stand. So, going to the structure inspection report, the 6042. The big things I think that we want to hear on the side of the table, especially now in the wake of everything that's going on, right, when we're big into safety and ORM and stuff like that now, is how well you're doing the 6042s. What are going to be some of your concerns? What kind of equipment are you going to have when you go out to do these structure inspection forms? From binos to wire brushes, really, how intrusive are you going to be? I don't know if you guys saw. And I know the OIC that it happened to, but the video that went viral of my hard hat guy. What's going to be the standard for you guys? I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I've got complacent and maybe overlooked things or kind of got in a rush or whatever the case may be. But I think we're at a point in the ATON community where we need to probably stop doing that. Right? We need to get on our P's and Q's and know what the standard is going to be for the guys. Are you going to have binos looking up and make sure all the bolts are down and anything's rusted? Are you guys going to be like, is it good to go? Or are they going to just say, hey, let's take the time, let's take the hour to really, really do a good structure inspection report, make sure this thing's safe to climb, because that's the last thing we want is somebody to go up 40 feet in the air and something, drastic happens. So. Maybe I'm giving a little bump test on a Tambi if you need to. Just don't hit it too hard because I got to rebuild it. So, know what the buddy system is, right? Know what that height for the buddy system is. I'm not going to give it to you. It's just going to make you get in the manual, but that's probably going to get asked, right? Where once a climber's going up, somebody, your safety observer is down there, right? And if somebody has to go at a certain height, then obviously somebody has to shift into a role of a safety observer if that guy's going up or gal's going up, and know what that height is. That's probably going to get asked. Know what the drop zone / safety zone is. Know what the difference in between fall protection and fall arrest is. Fall arrest is used to control yourself once the fall has already happened. So, to know what the difference is, you might get asked some examples. Know what the required gear is. Pretty standard across the board, right? Boots, gloves, safety glasses, etc. All that climbing gear, all that good stuff. So, know what the height requirement for the safety rail system is. So, any tower that's over an X number of height. If somebody wants to give it to me, but there's a certain height that you got to have the safety rail system. If you don't know what the safety rail system is, it's that little shitty ass clamp that you put right here on your chest, and you have to pull up rigid rail system, safety rail system, whatever you want to call it. So I know what that height requirement is. If nobody has, wire sweeping is pretty good. You might get asked. I got asked if I had to set up a tandem boat wire sweep, how would I do it? That was the question. This also goes into, like I was talking to like the Paul Lehman of D7. He's our environmental guy of D7. So know if you're allowed to wire sweep. If you're not, because of coral and stuff like that, right? You can't do it. So know that district SOP like the back of your hand. It's just going to save you from getting fired real quick over environmental stuff. So. Know what a working load limit is. You might get asked to kind of explain what a working load limit is. What the safety factor for overhead lifting is. What info you might find on the tags. Meaning, either your synthetic sling tags, or hopefully that light's not killing you guys on the airport. It's killing me, I'll tell you that. But the safety factors for overhead lifting, the info on the tags, like I was talking about synthetic slings or your wire rope slings, to know what kind of information to look for on them. The end fittings, big question that I've heard on every board is, what end fitting can we not lift with? Know that that's your wedge socket. The grade alloy for your lifting or for your gear that you're going to have. So grade 8 or better, or 7 for gripe chains. We know that. All right. Going into positioning, what system do we use for positioning? Believe you me, for you guys who are going for ATON, who might have been at an AN a couple years ago and are sitting for all 4, know that it's not IATONIS, it's not App Silver. It's changed since then. So get into that, look and see the new system. It's pretty awesome. So I've been in ATON since about 2008, and I think it's changed 3 times. So it's pretty good now. You might get an APR put in front of you, and kind of like a Mo board if you're, for relative motion, all that good stuff. So you might get an APR put in front of you and ask, hey, what are you looking for? The answer isn't everything, because we know that you're going to look at everything, but be able to pick out some specific things. Looking for your W2s and what does that mean? And your NEMA strings, know what your NEMA strings are, right? GGA, GRS, GSA, GST, all that good, right? There's some more in there. I'm not going to give you all the rest, but know that there's no AP on the rivers. But just be prepared to answer that question. At your ANT, do you position fixed aids? So I like to ask this question because I did it a lot when I was in Tybee. So when would you position a fixed aid? So be able to come up with that. My biggest thing was whenever I pulled up to a fixed aid to service it, and I looked on the chart and kind of something didn't look right, I just pull up the positioning computer and don't necessarily have to position it, but sometimes they're off 15 to 20 yards. So it's good to get that AP on the fixed aids, even though you're not required to. But we're using due care, right? So 15 to 20 yards off, that can be pretty detrimental when you sign that AP, or all that paperwork that the aid's left watching properly. But it's 20 yards off from when they position it back in the 40s. You could easily just made a chart correction and got everything put back the way that it should be. So that's a pretty good question to ask. Know what the 5 waterway types are, right? So we got deep water and shallow water maintained, deep water, shallow water not maintained, and then sea coast and coastal waters. Know your 12-foot depth, and then what your position tolerance is for. So we don't have accuracy classifications as far as Alpha Bravo Charlie anymore. We have waterway types, and this based off of a 15 to 25 to 40 yard positioning tolerance that you have. So know them. And the tolerance position manual is pretty easy. I think it's like 63 pages. So know that. Let me see if I got any questions. Initial major rebuild, major tolerance. Yeah. So good point, Jake. And we'll get to that here in a second. Do we set buoys on the toe or the shoulder? So know what the toe and the shoulder are. You might get asked that. That's like a little softball question, kind of bring you back in there. But know what that is. It's right in there as well. What is MP? Discuss 3 yards for fixed aid, right? So MPP is most probable position of the what? And what is 2DRMS when it comes to that, right? That's your error. So you have AP, MPP, 2DRMS, so everything's all calculated in. Define excursion. How is it measured? Is it measured from the buoy to the sinker, or is it measured from the sinker to the buoy? Also, what are you positioning? Are you positioning the buoy, or are you positioning the sinker? So know your different types, or define excursion, and then which is right the horizontal distance that the buoy is being forced away from the sinker. Know the different methods of determining this excursion, and or the 3 types, and then how is it measured. Another big one that's usually thrown out I've seen is how many miles are you required to be within a DGPS tower site to position. So know that, right? It's 260 nautical miles, which I think is equal to like 300 statute miles. But at 260 miles, you're required to be inside of that 260 miles to be able to properly position and say something is on station. So another big one is what are your requirements to test your positioning equipment? So when would you? Which is, if you wanted to do it every day, you could. But what would be your reasons, right? If you have any reasonable doubt, obviously, any hardware configuration change, etc. So if you change a power cable to a DGPS or your GPS that you have on the Tambi, are you going to evaluate your positioning equipment? So we talked about 2DRMS. Just know that it's error. Look into it. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to see. Know what your design positioning for range structures are, right? It's contracted, but there's a difference in between design position and design position. Design position is going to be for your major structures, your ranges. Know that you're obviously not going to be doing that, but know that's it. It'll be contracted out of position. Know what a hurricane pile is. That's usually asked. And then they might ask you what an as-built position is. So know what after you build a range, where does that as-built position come in? What do they position? Going back to APRs, know that you have 10 days to get it back to DPW, and then the big thing with them too, is if you have an urgent APR for some reason, a structure or a wreck or something like that, or a post-grounding survey or something like that, right? You can always put urgent on there and get it back, so we know how long it usually takes to get back. So know what your required entries for your APR are, right? Your reason for your visit, your on or off station excursion if you used it. Verify lightless chart IATANAs. Any departure from normal procedures you want to put in there. All that good jazz. So now I'm on to this. So let's talk a little bit about the rivers. Like I said, I'm not a river guy. This was my big thing that I reached out to every 6 months prior to seasonal. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, just like Nick said down there, right? Positioning every 6 months prior to seasonals. So that's also good. But all right, so going to the rivers, some things to think about, right? And I'm not, like I said, I'm not an expert on the rivers, and I know Master Chief Ellis, and like I said, Chris Stovers and all these guys, Master Chief Duel and Jimmy Holston, right? They've all been on the rivers. They all know it. But talk about small boat ops. A big question that I hear around for people who haven't been on the rivers is talking about small boat ops. You take over your ship and you go out for your first patrol, and the XO says, all right, we're going to drop the small boat. They're going to go up to this Ron Tower up here, which is like 4 miles upriver, and they're going to go start brush cutting and all that stuff, right? In the wake of everything that's happening, are you going to allow that to happen? So obviously you will, because then you'll never get anything done on the rivers. But what are some of your concerns? What are your safety concerns? There was a mishap, and I challenge you. I don't say I challenge you, but I want you guys to read. There's a mishap, and I'll get it posted on here too about the guy who fell up on the rivers. And a big thing that came from that is when they're calling EMS and they're trying to give them a position, we're here, and the people, they don't talk Coast Guard lingo. They don't know where you're at. So knowing your geographic area, right, knowing your comms, knowing your risk assessment or your ORM, making sure that you got good communications back and forth, knowing some of your, the insects, the snakes, the poisonous plants, the proper gear, the PPE that's being worn, the qualification process, make sure that you're sending guys and gals up there that are qualified to do the job. So stuff to think about. River stages was a big thing that I was worried about. So know who controls locks, right? Know who to call if you're looking how you need to set your buoys and get your drafts. Like I said, I'm not the ATOM professional, but know on the fast water versus pooled water, know what the recommended depth for setting is, right? 9 and 12 feet. That doesn't mean that you're setting that, but knowing who to call, right? The top lock and the south lock, finding out what the river stages are, and being able to articulate how you're going to be setting your aids on the river. Vortex shedding, that was for Jake Needhouse down there. Know what vortex shedding is? That was asked to me on both my district and sector boards. So know what vortex shedding is. Know the different kinds of moorings that we have on rivers, meaning, jetting pipe or concrete moorings, right? Know what a river shot is. It's not 90 feet, it's 45. Know that we're using, wire, predominantly wire versus chain. Another scenario that was brought was bank beer, right? We all hear this, oh man, we pull over to the river and we're going to have some bank beers. So are you going to allow that to happen? Your XPO or your EPO is like, hey, let's pull over here, and then you find out that we got a cooler full of beer on the back. Are you going to allow that to happen? Creosote piles, know how to be able to identify them, know how to, what the proper procedures for disposing of them, cutting them up, right? Know the PPE that needs to be worn, which is going to be full Tyvek suits, just all this. It's a whole lot different than it is from our CCA piles that we have. So know all them procedures. Know that they got to go to different dumpsters, all that good stuff. So there's some hazmat involved with it. Some of your concerns on brushing, right? Ron towers. What are your concerns, like we talked about, with insects and snakes and people? I know if you read in there in the manual, it discusses brushing in the winter because if you can brush in the winter, know the difference between setting methods is critical. And just like Master Chief Ellis says, know the difference between Upper Mississippi and Lower Mississippi. Setting methods is critical. Master Chief, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm pretty sure that we'll find out soon. But now I lost where I was at. I'm sorry. But brushing in the wintertime, I guess by doing that, it's been proven that it kind of reduces a little bit of the risk, maybe not all, but it reduces some of the risk for the river. So, like I said, I'm not a big river guy. So please reach out to your river tender OICs and just pick their brains. I'm pretty sure Master Chief Ellis would be willing and able to help anybody out if they have some more questions about that. Or if you have questions, get in contact with me and I'll give them. But fall protection. Right, Safety Environmental Health Manual, everybody's required, every ATON unit is required to have a fall protection plan, regardless. If you're an ant or you're a construction tender, we're all required to have it. Even for walking a crane, which still has to be in a fall protection plan. So make sure you get in the Safety Environmental Health Manual. It's pretty simple. It lays it out. Pretty much all you got to do is take it out of there and put your name in there, which maybe that's not doing due diligence. Really read through it, tailor it to your unit, what it needs to be, and make sure that everybody's in there. The TTP for inspection criteria for weight handling, make sure you get into that. The registry of lifting appliances, you'll probably have a couple questions on there. What is the registry or lifting appliances for? Battery tracking. Remember that, cradle to grave. How are we going to? What's the question I'm looking for? Or how do we track is going to be the question from cradle to grave. If you lose a battery, what are you required to do? Right, that's all in your district SOP. Simple questions like, what does 8x26 LR mean to you? So if you're going down a little rabbit hole or something like that, they might throw that out to you. So don't forget what 8x26 LR means, or 6x36 independent wire rope core. Know what refusal is? That's going to be on there, I promise you. Refusal and fixity. So refusal, right, is after 20 blows of the hammer, the pile isn't moving more than 1/8 of an inch. And then fixity, right, is vertical stability after penetration of the seabed. Know that we don't punch to refusal. We try not to punch to refusal. We try to punch to fixity. And then I think the CEU projects, right, you'll probably get some of this because at an ant or on a construction tender, right, you don't own your property. So you might get some in the engineering CPOP or POP boards in relation to your ATON structures. Know what an SSMR is. Know what a CASREP is in relation to that. Some simple, I guess in closing, some simple things, right? Know what an isolated danger flashing is. You might get asked that, or what a quick flash is going to be. Know what a junction is. And then for ATON afloat, a couple more things. Just talk about your duty as an OIC and a WLIC, right? You might not be primary on these aids, but know what your duty is when it comes to the LNMs, right? Are you still going to be intrusive in the LNMs to make sure that that everything's getting said or everything's getting corrected as need be? How yellow gear, SPME, just I guess the last big thing with this. I wanted to close on this because it's pretty important. I think I think the majority of your ATOM stuff that you're going to see nowadays in the wake of everything that happened with everything that's going on with cranes and yellow gear and stuff like that, right? Know when you first come to your unit, know what your qualification procedures are before you get there. Who's controlling it. Like here, we have the sector controls, your OF 346s, and the qualification process for our yellow gear. They own all the yellow gear, so know what the qualification procedures are. Know what you're going to do first and foremost when you're coming in there. How are you going to approach it your first couple weeks? How are you going to make sure that proper checks are getting done on the gear, the equipment, who's maintaining it, what their qualification is, and then a big thing going around is money for training. So if you have a crane like I had up in Murrich's and you don't have no money to get somebody to come out and qualify your crane guys, are you going to stop operations because your guys aren't qualified you don't feel that they're qualified to run the crane? So know who you can reach out to for some money for that. But get into, big time get into that stuff for safety wise, right? Know who's been certified. Did they come from a unit before where they were certified cranes? So obviously then they just came over this one. They said, hey, you're good to go. And they issue them a 346. Know the procedures that went through it. Know what the PQS, JQR is, all that good stuff. So I'll open up to any questions. That's about all I got for ATON stuff. If there's anything that anybody else wants me to go over, I can. A lot of this ATON stuff, you guys all know it. It's just getting in there and seeing what the important stuff is that you might need to brush up on, if that makes sense. I'll leave it up to you. Kind of felt like I rushed through it, but still did it in your timeline. And you guys, please don't forget to reach out to me. If you guys have any more questions regarding ATON stuff, like I said, there's so much information on this stuff, and I tried to pick out what I thought was important. Like I said, this is just strictly me. I know there's a lot more to touch on, but if you guys want me to, I think I still got a couple minutes, but what do I got, Nick? I got 10 minutes, so I'm going to get after it. Hey, so I guess a couple more things in leading up to the board preparation. This isn't ATON, so if you guys are here strictly for ATON, you're more than welcome to hop off. But some things for me, right? I had a hard time trying to figure out how I was going to tell the board that I wanted to be an OIC. I don't mind have a question. Why I wanted to be an OIC, really? Because I thought that there was a good answer and there was a bad answer. There is no good answer. There is no bad answer, right? It's your answer. So it's pretty simple. If you're doing it for the money, then I wouldn't say I'm doing it for the money. But just be ready, that if you answer, I want to lead people and I want to do that right. You're doing that as a BM3. You're doing that as a BM2. So be able to really think about that question. Why are you here? It's not to lead people because you're already doing that, right? Do you want to have a greater impact on the Coast Guard by being an officer in charge? My thing was ever since, or why I wanted to be is just because of the mentors that got brought up. I wanted to be like Master Chief Chuck Winter, if any of you guys know him. He's retired now. But he was my first officer in charge, and I wanted to be like that dude. I looked up to him as a non-rate, and I went into that and why I wanted to be an officer in charge with him. So come up with something good. That first impression, let me tell you, when you walk into that room and you own that shit, excuse my language, but you got to walk in there and I say not be cocky, but you got to own it. You can't, if you show nerves right off the bat, right? They all know you're nervous, but if you walk in there confident, regardless of what happens, right? That first impression is if you make people sit back in their chair, okay, this guy's here, then you've done a good job. But practice what you're going to say when you come into the room. That there's going to be a commander at your potentially a commander at your sector boards. If you're going over district, it's probably an admiral, or not an admiral, but a captain. So that first initial, good morning, captain, or good morning, commander. I am blah, blah, blah. I guess the way I said it was, good morning, Captain. I'm Chief Petty Officer Adam Lorentz, Executive Petty Officer, or Officer in Charge, or whatever you are at the time if you're going back. I'm requesting to be screened for Officer in Charge, seeking certification for ATON ashore and afloat. So own that thing, right? Be able to sit down, know what your leadership philosophy is, know what your command philosophy is, and you don't need to know it verbatim, right? Because they don't want to waste time with you sitting there with your 2-page command philosophy if that's what you got. But know the few key points in it and pick them out and go with it. So if your big thing is people, I want to take care of my people and I want to afford them the best opportunity that they can to succeed in the Coast Guard, and then you're masking everybody. Obviously, you're not living up to your command philosophy. So know what that is. You're going to be nervous, right? Know them questions, like I talk about that policy box that Master Chief Hoffling talked about, right? I'll tell you a scenario, right? I had a scenario where I had a family, or one of my guys, his wife calls him up and says he's got a burning cross in his yard. What are you going to do? So my first reaction was like, whoa. I want his family to get to the base as soon as possible, right? My XPO or whoever's there with me or whatever the case is going on, somebody's going to take him to get his family, bring his family back to the base, and they're going to be staying at the base tonight. Because I'm not going to expect them to get a hotel or nothing, right? And they're like, whoa, you're outside of policy. Can they stay on base? No, they can't stay on the base. However, they're going to stay on board the base, and I'm going to notify my boss, the captain, and let him know, hey, listen, this is what I got. They're staying on board for the night. Let the duty crew know, blah, 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 blah. So I say that because I went in that scenario well outside of policy, right? I wasn't skirting the gray line. I went well outside of policy, but you're able to articulate it. So be prepared for them questions, right? Know that you're going to get some questions that you're trying to think, what's the policy answer? But just go with your gut instinct. What you're really going to do is what you need to say. So, I don't know. What else you got? Are you going to drink with your crew, right? You're going to get that question. Are you going to drink with your crew? And if you say no, you say no. If you say yes, you'll be able to articulate why. Am I going to? Yeah, I'm probably going to have a beer or two with my crew. However, I will make sure that I'm responsibly drinking and setting a good example. Let them know that I am a person. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and get smashed during a port call. That's definitely not going to happen. But however, if we get off the ship for a couple hours, or for not a couple hours, but not your 12-hour bottle of throttle, but we're off the ship for a day, and the guys and gals want to go out and have a beer, and they ask me to go, yeah, I might go out and have it with them. So don't lie. Just be honest with the board. Any questions? No questions. All right. Like I said, I'm going to get off here, so if you guys have any questions, please reach out. If you know who's on this thing or on this page who's sitting for anything, reach out to them guys, right? You can't. I say you can't do it yourself. You can do it yourself, but it's a lonely process. So reach out to these guys. I know a lot of people when I was going through the process changed my mind on a lot of ways that I was going to answer, and they articulated why, and we discussed it, and it made a lot of sense to me. So the way I would have answered it prior to going through is probably a lot different if I wouldn't have networked with these other people and the candidates who are going to be sitting for the board. So I appreciate everybody's time. Sorry I kind of rushed through it. Like I said, there's just a lot of information. Surveys, I didn't get to that, but post-grounding surveys, right? No falling in incident of what you're required to do for a post-grounding survey. So sorry, Jake, forgot about that. Cool. Talk to you guys later. I appreciate it. Thanks, Nick. If you got anything else, like I said, email me, hit me up, whatever. Talk to y'all soon. Thanks.